Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Work Hackers powered by Doki. I'm Kishore, and in today's episode, we will be exploring how workplaces can be defined for a larger purpose, not just mere productivity. My guest today is Lisa Whited. She's a world renowned workplace strategist who helps organizations reimagine work around people, belonging, and sustainability. She has 4 decades of experience in workplace strategy design and has also been a published author of the book Work Better, Save the Planet. In today's conversation with Lisa, we'll be diving deep into what leaders still get wrong about hybrid work, how purpose and equity connect to performance, and why designing with empathy could redefine the future of work itself. So stay tuned with us. This one will definitely change the way you look at work and workplace. So yeah, hey Lisa, welcome back to Work Hackers. Thank you for joining us today. As I was giving your intro earlier, the thing struck me actually that you spent nearly 4 decades reimagining workplace. Been in this industry for the longest, if you ask anybody. Workplaces evolve from the grey cubicles and monotone desks to the glamorous, illustrious campus culture that Google, Meta, Amazon have pushed in the early 2000s to actually one fine day, all of it going away, and every large organization saying that we'll go completely remote with the pandemic hitting, to currently everybody back to the decision board and the tug of war between flexibility and RTO mandates going at an all-time high. So, what do you think have made that change in the past 5 years in workplaces?
Well, it's so interesting. The world of workplace, and right now we're really talking knowledge worker, white collar workplace, right? We're mostly talking about that type of work. And how we work comes out of the industrial age. It comes from the industrial revolution where people had to go stand on the factory floor at a machine and they had to stay there all day long. And they were tethered to that machine. We have, because of technology and how we work, we don't necessarily work. We don't need to work that way. And yet the legacy of how we think about work is still that old model. Many folks are still thinking that you need to be present. You need to be physically here for me to know that you're working. So what I believe is happening with the return to office focus is people are falling back on what they know, which is understandable. Humans are creatures of habit and comfort and what we know. And they are not sure how to measure performance based on outcomes rather than presence. So there's so much data that supports all of this. And I know we're going to get into it, but I think that basically what we've got is folks are uncomfortable with the change in new ways of working, and they're hanging on to legacy of how we used to work.
It's simpler to not engage in a new exercise, rather follow something that has been in practice for 20, 30 years.
Yeah, 100%.
Completely against that kind of work culture. You've always considered larger purpose for the organization, for the workplace. It's considered purpose to be of more importance than productivity metrics or attendance of the employee. Right? So if leaders were to think in that direction, how they should design work around productivity purpose rather than presence, what should be the changes that the organization should be able to accommodate or they should look forward to?
Yeah, and I want to be clear. Purpose is important. Purpose is paramount. And it doesn't mean just chasing what my heart desires. But an organization invests a lot of time and energy into creating their strategic plan and articulating their vision, their values, and their purpose. They spend so much energy on that. And yet when it gets down to the day-to-day work that people do, and this is, I was going to mention, I've got several links to the research that supports my talking points, so we'll put those in your show notes. McKinsey had reported a few years ago, 85% of executives felt that their day-to-day work was connected to the organizational purpose. 85%. Only 15% of managers and employees felt that their day-to-day work was connected to purpose. That is a tremendous gap. Why does that matter? Purpose is an intrinsic human motivator. We want to know at the end of the day, especially if it's been a tough day, that the work we've done is making things move forward. It's a human condition, a human need. And when we don't feel like we're contributing and making things move forward, and we just feel like we're there doing busy work, it hits us it hits our engagement, it hits our happiness, it hits our productivity. So it's very important to pay attention to purpose, to clearly articulate it, and then make sure everybody knows how their work is connected to purpose, to organizational purpose.
So it's about basically identifying or basically minimizing the hierarchy within the organization. You've also said this in previous conversations as well, that the decisions are made by a small group of people that impacts a large number of people in the organization, the people who are doing the day-to-day work, basically. And that is one of the reasons that this kind of a disconnect comes between the two levels or multiple levels in the organization. Right. Adding to that, right recently, Forward and FlexIndex came up with some research data. I hope you've also seen this regarding return to office mandates, that RTO mandates are widening gender pay gaps, and women are 3 times more probable to take pay cuts so that they'll get the flexibility of choice in workplace. So this whole dynamic between power and place, how do you think workplaces could be designed so that this kind of a situation doesn't turn up? And also, when we speak about equity at workplace, most people frankly see it as a PR value, not actual value. There is no business outcome to this, be it equity, be it sustainability. When we speak about that, most leaders are reluctant to adapting to that into the organization because they think that it's just the PR value, what is out there. Conscience is not worth any business outcome. What is your take? I mean, you work with the largest organizations. Are they right, or is there something that they're missing?
Oh boy, could we talk about this forever? It's disheartening. It's disheartening as a person who identifies as a female to see what the inflexibility of work does to parents. Let's just even call it that, to parents, to caregivers. I won't even bring gender into it. But as far as how this impacts productivity, profitability, all right, again, I'll give you the links. Companies that have flexible work policies, flexibility, report up to 53% higher innovation. We attract more diverse talent, as I said, caregivers, people with disabilities, people with non-apparent disabilities. Non-apparent disabilities are people that have ADHD, anxiety, other type of disability. They do not disclose that at work. 80% of people with non-apparent disabilities, that's a US statistic, do not disclose their disability for fear of stigma and retribution. But when we can include policies and ways of working that allow for more diverse people to participate, not just the middle-aged, heterosexual, white male, which is how work has been designed. It comes from the Industrial Revolution. It makes perfect sense. It makes perfect sense that that's how we are thinking. However, when we have data that shows how innovation grows, productivity, profitability, when you've got a more diverse workforce, it is frankly stupid of organizations to not think about how they can support more inclusive ways of working. Another statistic, when teams are diverse, they're 70% more likely to capture new markets and 45% more likely to grow market share. So again, we'll include those statistics, but it is a no-brainer to create these innovative work teams so that you can, underscore what you're trying to do for work outcomes and profitability.
To that, the second is that productivity is the measure that organizations are taking, or attendance is the only measure that they are currently considering. That could be also a possible reason that all this is not convenient. Rather, right? So when we speak about attendance, one of the biggest concerns that the employees have is proximity bias. If when a team is completely or remote, you don't always get the idea of belonging. You have to, the organization has to design belonging into your work culture, right? And you've also always mentioned this in a lot of platforms as well. So, what do you think belonging looks like when employees never share a physical space, when they are separately located?
And the best way to ask what belonging looks like is to ask employees what belonging looks like for them. We cannot presume to know what it feels like to belong. And so it's having a conversation with, and there are organizations that have always had remote people, right? There have been positions that have always been remote. So it's being intentional about inviting people into a conversation. And unfortunately, there's always been a lack, from my view for 40 years as a consultant, a lack in investing in training for managers and team leaders to invest in training. How do you manage a distributed workplace? How do you manage a virtual or remote employee? It was amazing that COVID flipped the switch and people went remote. Technology was seamless. We all learned Zoom and how to take ourselves off mute. And yet, the amount of investment in teaching people even further, how do you facilitate a remote conversation effectively? If you're a one-on-one doing a manager doing a one-on-one, how do you ensure you look to me right now, Kishore, that you're smiling, you're happy, you're good? How do I know you really are though? Like, right?
Yeah,
What is a question I can ask that's not invasive and yet shows you that I care, that I have empathy? So there's so many things that I think we could have already have done better in the workplace before COVID, and now we have got to do it better. I'll tell you another reason why we have to do it better. One of my book I read a couple of years ago, which I loved, was Virtual Natives, about the new generation reinventing work, play, and culture. And the new generation, the alpha generation, which is coming up past after the current one,
Gen Z.
yeah, Gen Z, three things that they will not stand for. They expect inclusivity as a get out of the gate. Like that's just an expectation that an organization they join will be inclusive and diverse. They expect sustainability, true sustainability, not greenwashing. And finally, they have no patience for processes that are outdated and policies and norms that don't make sense. They want to see it improve. And if you don't, then they're going to walk away. So organizations today, if they don't figure out how to create ways of working that support younger people and their beliefs and what they want, they're going to get hurt. The ones that are not afraid of leaving a legacy behind and are okay with new ways of working are going to outperform the old models.
Yeah. So, what could be certain tangible design choices that an organization could make that would help teams build a sense of connection, even and a shared purpose, like we said in the beginning? The lack of purpose is one of the core reasons. So, how can an organization simply get into it? If we to a CXO with a lot of research work, probably they'll get spooked. So, let's help them get into the water slowly. Probably one or two design choices.
So, now one of the reasons there's such a disconnect between the executives connecting their work to purpose and the employees not being connected is because it's always been a small group of people that were part of that conversation around purpose, values, and vision. When an organization is not afraid of opening up and inviting in facilitated ways, well facilitated conversations, inviting the voices in of their people, which I had a client do this a few years ago. They reconsidered their vision and they opened up that whole conversation to all employees. The result was a vision that people were behind because they were part of that conversation. So when it comes to how we can be effective in work, one of my favorite tools is I use the systematic inventive thinking, innovation brainstorming method, SIT or SIT. And I write about it in my book, up there. So systematic inventive thinking is a facilitated method of inviting your employees into a conversation about what can we do differently, what can we improve. It could be process, it could be communication, many aspects. And when we pause to have that conversation, and it is not a lot of time to have that conversation, the ideas that can come out of it can grow into new ways of thinking about work. One of my favorite methods is subtract. So we tend to, again, we add, we need to add this. We need to add this meeting. We need to do this policy or process. Take it away. Pause and say, what can we remove? What can we take away? What will allow us to streamline, whether it's communication or a process we've been doing forever? We just don't take that time, and it is time well spent. So that's around process and policy and thinking about work as a construct, how we work. As far as design, you asked about design, physical design. There's been activity-based working for years. This idea of we create a focus zone or a library, whatever, great. I think we need to go far, far deeper on that type of thinking. I'm going to ask you, what is when you think about the place where you can be most creative or you're really into your work, where are you when you are really into your work?
So when I work, I'm more comfortable working from home. But then again, occasionally when I have brainstorming sessions with my team, I prefer going to the office space. It should be a choice of me and all my teammates. Get aligned on a call when and where we come and meet. Rather, it should never be forced. I don't expect them to come to office every day. Like I don't want them sitting at a desk 10 hours a day because I know that every day an employee will never be productive 10 hours. And I don't want them sitting in one place or tied to a location. Everybody should work when and wherever they're comfortable from. And giving them that sense of flexibility also brings accountability to the team because they are accountable to the work that they're supposed to do, and that is implicitly coming into them, and they'll do that at all cost. I don't have to reminding about deadlines and all that. Giving the flexibility actually makes people more productive, in my opinion. At least that's what I've seen with my team and the people that I've worked with. So this whole discussion that people are not accountable and to micromanage them to a particular level, I don't believe in that. And such an environment would definitely drain people. And of course, research have shown in the past that people are quick to burn out in such situations. If you're giving them a toxic workplace where you expect them to show up before time and you expect them to put in late hours in the workplace and have no sense of work-life balance, because this whole conversation about purpose, when that is brought into the table, the whole problem is that a lot of organizations tend to make people work beyond their working hours and their whole, I mean, if I'm a startup founder, my work-life balance is my company, but I cannot expect all my employees to work like that. They have 10 other priorities to look into. And if I am able to accommodate not all of them, at least a large share of them, they'll be most productive and they'll be more contributive to the organization. And loyalty comes with that. It's a simple exchange.
Yes. So what you have described is a very holistic look of work, which is my belief as well, that when we are given balance, choice, flexibility, within reason, there can be guidelines, of course, there needs to be, but we need to know what the outcomes are. What are we trying to get to? When we do that, and I'm going to mention another program that I think supports us very well. What we have done is allow people to contribute as humans on planet Earth. And what do I mean by that? I'm a member of a family. I'm a parent of 3 adult children. I have pets. I've got a husband. I want to contribute to my neighborhood, my community, and be present because that's what lives society. That's what our world needs. We need that flexibility and choice. And we need to contribute to a bottom line and make money, right? And make income. That's part of a healthy society. In the early 2000s, there was a Best Buy, which is a company in Minnesota, created ROW, Results Only Work Environment. It's based on outcomes. People are not having to be in their seats from 8 to 5 and punch a clock. It's what are the outcomes? What are we trying to achieve? And then how do I contribute to those outcomes? And I'm responsible for that as an individual. The other thing that I see in the RTO mandates is there, and this has always been a true statement, when you've got a performance issue with an individual, it's best to have that conversation. It may be a few individuals. You've got a performance conversation, but don't make a mandate that's going to negatively impact 98% of your people for the 2 that you don't want to have a conversation with. And I do think that that is part of the challenge, that we hear RTO because people do not want to deal with performance issues that is better handled with a one-off conversation.
Yeah. And when it comes to RTO, it is I believe it is because many leaders still equate visibility with value and they don't have that kind of trust. They are like, it is a discussion about presence is equal to trust in the organization, and how can we change that leadership mindset that, to a more outcome-based approach? So I would ask you, if we're advising a CEO, how can they redesign the workspace and the culture that instills a level of trust in the employees so that everything shifts from a attendance perspective to an outcome-based approach in today's time?
Yes. And what we're trying to do, and that's what employees are saying, look, during COVID, we were home, we were doing the work, you trusted us, now do you not trust us? I think there are many layers of complexity that go into RTO conversation, and I will not pretend that I know all the why behind it. I think there are many layers that drive an RTO conversation. But if a leader is interested in saying, okay, well, what could we do instead? You think this is so important. What else could we do? I think that there are 3 questions that a leader can ask. What does success look like in this role? Thinking about the individual employee's role or as a collective. How will we know it's working? And what's getting in the way of people delivering it? And that what's getting in the way is a conversation best to have with your people. When you invite them into a conversation and say, what would allow you to do your work better? What's getting in your way? Or as my friend Partha says, who wrote a book about frictionless working, How can we make work easier for you? And listen to what your people say. People aren't going to say, if you brought a pinball machine in or ping pong or pizza, then I can't wait to come into the office.
Yeah.
That's not what people are looking for. They want to contribute. They want to make a difference. They want to be of value. They want to know that their own skills and abilities are going to the best use for the company. Again, it comes back to human intrinsic motivators.
Yeah. So leaders should put down their ego and go and talk to the employees rather than make assumptions on their behalf.
I'll make assumptions. That's the thing. And that's the thing in my conversations with employees. I assume I work a certain way and you work the same way. And then when we have this conversation, we learn more about how we work differently. And I think you find executives thinking, well, a couple things. This is how I made it in the world, and therefore my people need to experience the same thing. Or this is how I work, so therefore this is how everybody should work. The best thing is you just ask the people, invite them in, listen, and they are adults. They don't expect you're going to do everything they're suggesting, but if you can show you got a few good ideas that you're going to implement that came from them and explain why you are not doing other things. Why? Oh my God, how many organizations say do this and they don't explain the why? Viktor Frankl, who wrote Man and Meaning, said, I wish I wrote that down. Tell me the why, and then I will do the how, essentially. It was, I got to find that quote. I hate when I forget things. But yeah, it's people need to know why. They need to understand.
Most systems today are designed around the how rather than giving the why to the employee, right?
Yeah. We don't give the why. We don't give the why.
And then opinion. We'll be rubbing a lot of wrong feathers here saying this.
Well, I've heard organizations say, I get it. They're like, no, people should just comply. They know, just tell them to get on with it. This is what we're doing. Why can't we just show them why? Can't we tell them why? Why can't we tell them why? Is it because it's some secret? They're going to assume. If you don't tell them why, they're going to assume the absolute worst negative reason, because that's how our brain works as humans. If we don't tell me why, I'm going to assume it's the worst. I'm going to assume you don't trust me. If you don't trust me.
So that conversation comes back to making people the central element of this whole discussion, and then bringing trust and purpose into the equation. So going there, let's discuss your book, Better Save the Planet. It came out 3 years ago. It's available on Amazon. The whole book breaks out a framework called Planet, which is not a very common way of looking at workplaces. It brings purpose to the center of the discussion, and sustainability is tied into work design. Many organizations still very strongly believe that sustainability and all are just some fancy term that is brought into the discussion table. It is not necessary. But there could be a lot of business outcomes. There could be financial benefits that the organization are not seeing. So help the audience get a better insight on that. Let's say an organization is making some environmental or cultural choices rather than operational choices. In the long term, it could be a part of their core strategy and it could give them benefits.
Yes. Yeah, 100%. So when I wrote my book, the planet is, I spell it with 2 L's. And I know people think it's a typo, but it stands for purpose, language, less, ask, net zero, equity, and time. And when I look at work as a whole and systems thinking, again, 40 years, and I'm learning every day, I'm learning more about how this all fits together. But it's the idea that waste, we're talking about waste when we talk about workplace. And we got to remember this. COVID, places were empty 40 to 60% of the time. Before COVID, workstations empty 40 to 60% of the time. Private offices were empty 73% of the time, because people that get private offices are often the ones traveling or on offsites or in meetings. So there was tremendous waste in the workplace before COVID. Why does that matter to the planet? Well, first, you would think an organization would say, wait a minute, we're spending a ton of money here, operating costs, heating and cooling, empty space. Why? That doesn't make sense. Why would they allow that waste? But they did, because it was how we always did workplace, right? So you've got the expense, you've got the wasted space you're paying for, heating, cooling. You've got people who are feeling disconnected because they literally are sitting now, especially in a workplace with nobody around them. So the idea of the planet model is, how can we be smarter with our resources, because it will benefit the planet, it will benefit the air quality. Think about commuting. I want to just say, I do believe it's important that people connect face to face if they can. I absolutely believe in that. It builds social capital. Social capital is what allows you and me to continue to have a conversation and do work together as a team well after we have had that face-to-face time. So it's an important investment. But there is such waste in workplace, and there has been for decades. So that's the physical sustainable model, right? To do with net zero.
Yeah.
But then the people, the individuals, and burnout. All right. So again, well before COVID, in the US, again, depression rates had been rising, suicide rates had been rising. All of this is going up, and people are isolated, right? The Surgeon General in the US issued a saying how that it was an epidemic of isolation. So if all that negative stuff's going on, then what can we do to rethink work as an activity and workplace where we work to be better for people, to allow more meaningful connections, help us get our work done, and improve the physical aspect of it so we don't have all of this waste. You know, we've got homelessness here, empty, and I'm sure you've seen that. And some empty buildings are being converted to housing. Great. What else can we do? What else can we do like that to make it better? Not follow the old model. The old model is outdated.
Yeah. When we talk about flexible work, most people equate it to a chaotic structure rather than a situation where we give the employees the choice. I mean, any flexible work advocate, if you ask them, what they're saying about flexible work is basically this, that there should be a workplace, a physical workplace where the employees can come together and work. It should never be mandatory. That's the whole point. But the advocates of RTO mandates, what they're thinking when we discuss about flexible work is the workplace going completely obsolete and everybody working from home, basically. Everybody in the Zoom calls through the day, in their pajamas, in their bedrooms.
Yeah.
That's the whole illusion that is covering this situation.
Yeah.
Probably.
So I have such a different vision of what work could be, and I'll share that. Using the SIT model, the systematic inventive thinking, which using the subtraction, we took a workplace and said, what if we subtract one thing? What if we subtract the desks in a workplace and you have no more desks? What is left? And what was left was essentially what we would call a student union in a university. And that's really an active, vibrant place where people connect and they work together there. So that's an example of thinking differently about workplace. I have a 23-year-old son, my middle child. He was at a workplace recently and he said to me, God, there's no energy here. There's no energy. It was a beautiful setting, a beautiful workplace, but he saw people sitting with headphones and workstations. And he said, I just saw one group that were connecting. So there's a future employee for an organization. If you've got somebody looking for energy and connection. So my reimagine of workplace is we have a place where we come together and we make a meal together and we literally break bread. We sit around a community table and we connect and we do something like that, share a meal. We do team building exercises. We go out in small teams and do whatever. We get some learning, training, development. We get our face-to-face time. We build social capital. That social capital that's built through those connections is long lasting. If we did that for 2 consecutive days, sharing several meals over 2 days, and then we go back to wherever we feel like we do our best work for 2 months, 4 weeks, whatever the time frame is, and we make those periodic, intentional moments of connection, that is where you can build vibrancy. You need far less space. You could take an entire office building and divide it up around 6 companies, and they could share that space on a rotating basis. But it's got to be intentional. It's got to be thought about and planned. The thing is, we have technology now. This isn't like somebody taking out a spreadsheet and having an admin organize this. There's technology that allows us to do this. It takes courage to consider a different model. But I absolutely believe it could be done. And it could make a tremendous, and I think there are companies out there doing it. I've read about a couple that have done that. They gave up their real estate completely and they invest in in-person connections twice a year.
Yeah, that helps employees, fulfill their emotional needs when they come into office. You can put all the facilities in a space that you're proposing to. But if everybody's tied to a particular desk, the whole purpose is taken away. And like you said, your son, who's essentially Gen Z, between Gen Z and Gen Alpha.
Yeah.
They are coming into the workforce. So what do you think from your experience in the past 4 years? What do you think the next 10 years workplace evolution would be? If the leaders take this intentional purpose to look at workplaces, how will the real estate component lose its relevance? I wouldn't say it would be completely taken out of the picture because we ultimately need workplaces and we need spaces coming together. So how do you think a workplace for 2030 or 2040?
We will measure metrics differently. We will not look at presence as a metric to measure. We still have organizations looking at badge card swipe data, all the different, there's still that going on. What if instead, again, we've got it with human wearables, right? What if we could really measure engagement? What if you and I, during our conversation we've had today, we each had a way to measure heart monitor, maybe, did my heart rate go up because I was really engaged in this conversation? We will have a way to realize that there's other things we should be paying attention to. They're the human elements. They're the things that make us human: emotional connection, empathy, engagement. We hear companies talking about engagement. Oh my God, Gallup has been measuring employee engagement for more than 30 years and it has barely changed. 87% worldwide are not engaged in their work, not engaged. We spend more time working than sleeping in our lifetime. And what are we doing? What are we doing? So I will tell you, as a parent of young people who are yet to enter the workplace, and I have one who has entered the workplace and has found work that she absolutely loves. It lights her up. It's fantastic. I have been self-employed for 40 years. And I'm quite a happy individual. I have designed my own life the way I want to live it, right? I would hope that for my own children and for the generations coming in, because it will allow them time and space to do things that our planet needs desperately. It needs more human connection. We need to pay attention to sustainability and to climate change, to homelessness, to poverty, to females all over the world, to inclusivity, LGBTQ plus. I mean, come on, disabled community. We have designed work for a very small segment of the population. The rest of us want to contribute. Again, it's part of our human need is to contribute and make a difference and be of value. To not invite everybody in is detrimental to humans and the planet.
Yeah, so for my take is something similar. For any organization to be future-proof, they have to open communication channels. They have to adopt technology. They have to look at how the landscape is evolving. Like you said, workplace today or something that has been there for 15, 20 years is designed for a particular group of people. And what is everybody's trying to do is accommodate or squeeze everybody into this system.
Yeah.
So you need to open the doors, open communication. I mean, it's a very basic thing. You ask your employees what they're looking for, what they're expecting out of the organization, not expecting out of an office space. That is a very surface level question. If I want to set up an office space, I shouldn't be asking where should I set up the office space. I should be asking what do you want from an office space.
Yeah. What are you trying to achieve? When you do have it, what would it be? And yes, exactly. And I think the other thing is the leaders need to be open to hearing what they hear and not enter that conversation listening and already thinking they know the answer. Listen, ask good questions, show empathy, remove friction, and see what can emerge. And know the feedback loop is super important in all of this. It's not a one-time conversation. It is a continuous conversation. And it's through that back and forth continuous conversation that we can get to where we want to go. And I also believe, and I've written about this before too, you can have a 100% remote organization and you can still have all these things. You can have empathy, you can have caring, you can have connection through a screen with intention. If you can do it intentionally, there's 36 questions to fall in love, where they took two people, gave them a set of questions and gave them time, and they just had those questions. That was it. They didn't know each other. And they built such a strong connection that they actually fell in love. I mean, that's pretty amazing. It's intention. It's done with intention. And so this is part of the coaching that I think, and I don't do this coaching. There are many people that are brilliant at this coaching. I have been in therapy. I think it's an awesome thing. But that is what we need, is that coaching for managers and leaders to be able to really listen to their people, show empathy, and be what I call courageous leaders, willing to do things differently.
And if they are still looking for business outcomes, they can look at the case studies of Zapier or Atlassian building billion-dollar businesses in a
Exactly.
distributed way.
There's so many great models and cases out there, 100%, that already show it, have the metrics, and follow the brilliant people that follow them, which is what I'm always reading about. And, the thing is, this isn't easy. I'm not standing here in my judgment like, oh, everybody should be doing this. It's easy. No, it takes work. But you've got
takes a lot of
believe.
effort.
Yeah, it takes more effort. Yeah.
And I've also had this discussion with Denise Broder that not all organizations or industries have the luxury of affording flexible work at this point. Like we said in the beginning, probably knowledge workers, that set of workers are more eager to adapt to this model.
They are, and yet I also tell my clients that have, frontline folks or people that have to be, service workers that have to be physically, you can still open a conversation with them and say, what would make your work easier? And let them be heard. They can be included because they will have ideas for making things better. Equity and equality are different. And so this RTO, this is, well, everybody needs to go back because our frontline people are going to have to be there. That's not necessarily true, but you should invite everybody into a conversation about what can make work better for them.
Even in those roles, there might be some components that could be taken out. Like you said, everything should be considered in a minimal fashion.
I mean, I did work with a restaurant, service workers, went in and we just had a conversation. What would make your work easier? They had ideas for changing the flow. I mean, people invite them into the conversation and they will have ideas. They know their work best. I always say, you hire excellent people, brilliant employees, listen to them. They've got great ideas. And all that can take is listening and courageous action. Yeah.
So large scale organizations should think like a startup to ultimately get to this discussion.
Yeah. I shared this with a client recently. I worked with an organization several years ago, and I was walking through their workplace, getting a sense of things. I am curious. I open up doors. I look in closets and all. And there was a green coat hanging in the closet. And the person conducting the tour said, oh, that coat belongs to an employee that left 12 years ago. The employee left 12 years ago and their coat was still hanging in the closet because nobody felt empowered to remove the coat. That's an example of the legacy that organizations have. We've done it this way. We've always done it this way. We're not going to change. We don't feel like we have the authority, autonomy to even get rid of a green coat.
They don't know what to do. I mean, in the workplace, they're always told what to do. And this doesn't come in the description.
Yeah.
Probably. It gets tossed around. I mean, probably a person who saw the code would ask his manager, ask someone else, and this whole question got tossed around in the room a couple of times. And ultimately,
you just leave it. It's easy. It's easier to leave it. It's easier to make people come back 3 days a week. It's easier. I feel like I say people are lazy. That's not it. But it's known. And again, that's a human condition. A known thing, your known is easier than the unknown. And yet our world needs us to lean into the unknown right now. We have got to be more courageous about questioning how we've always done things and being willing to do it differently. We just have to.
Taking out that coat is the actual metaphor that the organization should look at, right?
Get rid of the green coat, man. Get rid of the green coat.
So this was an amazing conversation. I hope the audience listening would have gotten a lot of perspective around how workplaces are evolving and what should be the core thing that you should be looking at rather than simple attendance or productivity from basic KPIs. They should look at the larger purpose that the team holds, employees hold, the real value that everybody is bringing to the table. And only in that way can workspaces be designed for the future and the organization stand the test of time.
For sure. I had three points to sort of sum that up. Remove the assumption that everybody works the same way. Design for clarity and connection, not attendance. It's clarity and connection. Clarity, what are the goals? What are you asking me to achieve? And allow me to build connection with my fellow coworkers. And stop using time and location as proof of value. Disconnect time and location from value. Look at outcomes. What are we trying to achieve? And think about metrics differently. measuring engagement, measuring true engagement, not just the performative engagement. Yeah. So there's so much more. My God, I think we could talk for a long time.
We could go on hours discussing this. I mean, the whole takeaway should be quality should be taking priority than quantity.
Yeah. So yes. Quality over quantity. I
hope people listening to this may have gotten great insights in this direction. And to all those listening, check out Lisa's book, Work Smart, Save the Planet. It's available on Amazon. I'll share the link in the description, and a couple of research that we've discussed in this conversation. I'll share the links for people to check out as well. Thank you, Lisa, for joining us today. Hope to see you soon. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for inviting me. Love talking with you. Appreciate it.
Yeah. And to the audience, you can wait for another episode of Work Hackers. I'll be having great conversations lined up in the coming weeks. I'm so excited to share it with everybody else. Thank you.